Before we begin this tutorial, I would like to direct you to the description of this video. In the description, you will find timestamps to specific portions of the video, allowing you to jump around without having to watch the entire video to find the information you need. If you need additional support after watching the video or section of a video, please contact support at rampinteractive.com or call us toll-free at 1-866-607-7267. Thank you and enjoy the video. Hello and welcome to this Ramp Interactive tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at the registration system. The Ramp Interactive registration system allows you to create seasons and add waivers, questions, among other things, to that season to take registrations for just about any sort of need you have. In addition to this functionality, the Ramp registration system can also push registrations up to your governing body, assuming they have partnered with us. If that is the case, not only will you be able to create registrations for yourself for unique things such as camps or clinics, but you'll also be able to have your season or regular registrations move up to your governing body. Without further ado, we'll actually take a look at the system. Upon signing in with your Ramp provided credentials, you'll be able to see the dashboard. Underneath of the dashboard, the first thing we have is public access. This is the link to the front end of your system. This is the link that you will put up for your clients to go to in order to register underneath of your association. Next, we have the summary. The summary is where you can view information about seasons underneath of your system. So this gives you a basic overview of information such as the amount of money that has been taken in, how much is outstanding, and whether any of that is outstanding is a pending charge. So if you have credit cards enabled, you could have pending charges still coming in that actually might still be outstanding but should still come in given that the pending charges go through. In addition to that, you can also see your number of registrations for things like players, staff, and officials, as well as team registrations, tournament registrations, and club executive registrations. Lastly, you can view the types of payments that were made and what the breakdown of those are. At the moment, there is no payments, so you can't view anything underneath of here, but you'll be able to see your credit card payments versus your offline payments versus how much came in through each type, as well as your fees. Lastly, we have the notices area. This is where you will see occasional updates from us, things like system updates, as well as notifications if there's something major going on, or if, let's say, there was an outage. Anything like that will appear in the notices, letting you know what's going on. Without further ado, we'll actually look at season setup. We're going to go through some basic season setup first, just to kind of give you an overview of how the system works in the most basic sense. This will work for lots of smaller organizations, and then we'll actually go and look through the more in-depth controls of the system. If at any point you want to go to a specific area of the video, if you go look in the description below, you'll be able to find time links to different areas within that video that go into the specific details you need. Therefore, if you just need information on transactions, look in the description of the video for the transaction area, and you should be able to find what you're looking for rather than listening to the entire video to get to that portion. To view your current seasons or create a new season, we're going to look underneath of the Seasons tab. Like I had mentioned earlier, there are two possibilities for your organization. Your organization may be set up by itself with Ramp Interactive, in which case you can create new seasons as well as copy any seasons you've created in the past, and you'll be able to take registrations underneath of those seasons doing all this setup yourself. In addition to this functionality, if your governing body is partnered with Ramp Interactive, you can have seasons from that governing body pushed down. You can see the difference between those two here, as the season created by this organization has the name of the club, Ramp Video Demo, while the season pushed down by their governing body has that as a subtext here, as Ramp Video Governing. This governing body season that's been pushed down and created by the governing body, any registrations underneath of it will automatically flow up to that governing body, therefore providing the governing body with all the registration information, credential information, waiver information that needs to be filled out without them having to fill it out multiple times. Basically, one registration with your club supplements both the governing body as well as if there's any region levels and you yourself as the club, as well as allowing you to take in all your monetary needs and fees. To do the governing body season setup, you're going to simply hit this blue button, and you'll be able to view the details of said season. Scrolling down, the first thing we have is the settings. The hidden portion will allow you to hide this in the club admin portal. This is good for archiving old seasons. So if next year or 2 years down the line, you don't want to be seeing information for this season, or you don't want to have it in drop downs when you're trying to do things, you can just hide it. All that information is still there. It'll just disappear from the back end of your system, and you can just come back to the Seasons tab and unhide it at any time. Next, we have the ability to enable team registration, enable staff registration, enable official registration, enable executive registration, enable CRC file upload, enable RAMP Triton Enhanced Online Criminal Record Check, and limit user registration per season. That's a bit of a mouthful. The first few are fairly self-explanatory. The RAMP system is always set up to take participant or regular registration. There is no checkbox for that. That would be the regular registration of you registering members to the association. You can, however, turn on additional functionalities. Team registrations will allow teams to register and their players to register to their team. Staff registration will allow your staff to register with the organization. Official registration will allow your officials, be that referees, umpires, or the like, to register with the organization. Executive registration will allow your executive to register with the organization. And last, to enable CRC file upload for staff and officials, that would be your criminal record check. You can get that from your local police department, and that can be uploaded by your staff and officials. Or, if you choose, you can even use the RAMP Triton Enhanced Online Criminal Record Check. That is an online criminal record check that will actually take you out of our system, and for $50, they can go and do the online criminal record check and get that file instead of having to go to their local police department. And the last one, limit user registrations per season. This prevents someone from registering more than once per role in the season. So if I've already registered as a staff member, I cannot go in and register again as a staff member a second time. That obviously might raise some questions, such as what if I am a team member on multiple teams? Staff members can be assigned to multiple teams. I'll just head that question off right there, because that's the number one question we'll get in result to that functionality there. This is a functionality that you have to be aware of, in the sense that lots of times for camps and clinics, you may have one season and you want people to register multiple times underneath of that season, or to register for different programs underneath of it. But there are also cases where you don't want people to be able to register multiple times underneath of a season for membership reasons, or just because it's going to cause problems with your tracking. So keep that in mind when it comes to this checkbox. The next option underneath of here is package options. Now, package options is a bit confusing to wrap your head around. Essentially, when it comes to registering, there are packages, and that is what people will pay for. Now, the system requires you to choose a package when it comes to participant registration. However, for staff, official, team, tournament, and executive registration, it does not require a package. If you do put a package in there, it will then require you to choose that package. This option allows you to have it both ways. Basically, if you put a package in there, the package will appear for them to choose when they're registering. But if you check this off, they don't have to choose a package. So they can have it both ways. They can see the options for paying, and they can just skip it and not pay as still an option without you having to create a $0 package. That is what these package options do. Enable volunteer module, we'll talk about that more when we talk about the volunteer options underneath of divisions. ePact, this currently isn't active, but when it is, you will see a notice on the board, and this video will be updated accordingly. And payment settings. Payment settings is the next big one. You have to choose which payment settings you're going to open up to your members. People cannot register until there is a payment option set. The most common payment option that most organizations use nowadays is credit card. Credit card is preferable because payment is made right at the time of registration. You can see that money come into your account, and you can do things like break up payments over multiple months. You can also do other things such as cash, check, vouchers, e-transfer, KidSport, and Jumpstart. These are all what we call offline payment options. The system will mark them as unreceived until someone manually goes in there and changes these settings on that payment. Each payment is tied to the account, so you'll be able to go in there and say this check payment has been received, and that will be taken off of that individual's account at that time and be marked as received payment. Looking a little more at the credit card options, there is also an option for offline credit card. In order to take online credit cards, you need a merchant account. You can inquire with us if you want a merchant account, and we'll provide you with those details. But if you want a merchant account and it's not quite ready yet, but you'd like to start taking registrations, you can turn on what's called offline credit card. offline credit card essentially acts like a vault. People can go in, they can pay for their registration, and it'll take their credit card information and put it inside of the vault. They haven't been charged for anything, and that information is just sitting there. Once your merchant account does come through, this option will disappear, this offline credit card option will disappear, and it will run all the cards inside of the vault. Obviously, there's going to be some failures with people maybe not having room on the cards at the time or misentered numbers. Usually about 5% of people who use the offline credit card option run into this problem. But you can go through the system and it'll show you those ones that were the failed payments, and you can then reconcile that with those individuals. Once you have your merchant account, you'll never have to use this option again. It's really just a stopgap solution. Lastly, the last few things to mention under here are the credit card administration fee and credit card administration fee type. This allows you to add an additional fee on top of your registration costs, either in a dollar amount or percentage, to offset the cost of using a credit card. Credit card administration fees can be anywhere from very low at like 1.5% to up to 3%, depending on the agreement you've reached or the agreement your governing body has reached with us. So you can put a percentage fee in there to help offset that balance. It may not seem like a very big deal, but for larger organizations, a 2% additional credit card fee could end up saving you $40,000 a year in money that you have to pay to your merchant account provider. Per registration, it does add up very quickly. So that's a good thing to keep in mind and something to bring up to your board if you are not currently doing so. The last two things underneath of here for payment settings are hide promo code option for public. There's a promo code field when you're registering. If you check this off, there won't appear that promo code field. And the other one is the one promo code per account. You can have multiple kids underneath of a single account. If you want to limit families to one promo code per family, you can check this off. And even if they have a promo code or multiple promo codes, they've gotten one from another family or something like that, they'll only be able to use a single promo code per their account. Lastly, underneath of here, that's important for initial setup, we have the options, player options, staff options, official options, executive options, and then a bunch more little minute settings underneath of here. It seems a bit overwhelming, but lots of these are actually very easy to get your head around. Underneath of options, we have the ability to turn on Respect and Sport, where they will put in their Respect and Sport number, and the NCCP, which again will allow them to check off what coaching they've done. The last thing underneath of options is the CC confirmation emails. CC confirmation emails will CC whenever someone registers. The confirmation email that that parent gets or that player gets will also CC that to whatever email address is put in here. Some registrars like to receive these emails, others do not. You can do that by simply checking it off. Additionally, you can have the division admin receive the email if you check off this box. Division admins will then get CC'd on the confirmation emails for people underneath of their divisions, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Player options, staff options, and official options, very self-explanatory. Things like asking for a photo, requiring a photo, asking for a birth certificate, requiring a birth certificate, and so on and so forth. Basically, if you ask for it, it is not required. They can register without it. If you require it, they need to provide that at the time of registration, or they will not be able to proceed. The other two that are somewhat important here are the parent guardian details and skip parent guardian details if registrant is 18 or over. The ask for parent guardian details basically allows you to take down emergency contact and parent guardian details. You can have that turned off if it's something like an adult league. And if it's a mixed league, so you have both underage and overage players, you can have it skip it if the player is over the age of 18, which is the average age of majority across most of Canada. We are aware that it's not for everyone, and we are looking at things to possibly change that in the future. Lastly, we have the staff options and official options and executive options, which are the exact same thing. However, they don't quite have as much as the player option, as the registration for those areas is a bit simpler. Lastly, you have a bunch of drop downs underneath of here that look very overwhelming, but the most of them are just these participant success message and success email boxes. Whenever someone finishes registration, they will get a success message that will say something along the lines of "thank you for registering." However, if you want to customize that message, you can simply type in here and put whatever you'd like, and they will see that upon the time of registering. The email is the exact same thing, but that is the email that they receive. Their confirmation email will say something similar, "thank you for registering," but the success email can then be updated to say something totally different, provide information about the organization, say "thank you for registering with this organization," anything like that. You can drop into the success emails and it'll be in CC to them along with all the information of their registration. And that's the same for all of these, the difference being this is for player, staff, official, team, and executive. Looking up at the earlier four, we have privacy policy. This can be filled out here. Check info. If you have check chosen as an option, this information will appear if they choose to pay by that option, and it will provide them things like who to make the check out to, if they need to post date the check, anything like that can be put in here. E-transfer info, exactly the same as before. This will provide them with information like what they should make the password for the e-transfer, what email address they should send the transfer to, things like that. And lastly, map info. We'll talk about map info and the out of bounds message in a little bit, and we'll return to this area. Once you've completed the season setup, and the very minimum is just checking off a payment option, you can hit submit. And you will now see that this season has been marked as OK. Going forward, we can now move on to the next step for a governing body season, and that would be to create packages, waivers, and questions. So if we go to waivers and we look at the governing body season, we will see that there are already waivers under here from the governing body. So there's a player waiver, a staff waiver, and an official waiver already created. Now these are coming from the governing body. We can also add our own waivers though. As an organization, we may have different waivers that are different, maybe parent code of conducts, information about different things. We can come in here, choose the registration type that this waiver is going to be for, give it a name, and add the waiver information in the text area below. Once we're happy with that, we can hit submit and submit this waiver. This waiver has now been added to the player waivers. We have the ability to edit it, deactivate, and delete it. You may notice that you do not have that ability for the governing body waivers. Those waivers under the governing body season cannot be edited by you because they are provided by your governing body. However, any waivers you put in there, you will be able to go back and edit, and you can add as many waivers as need be. There's no limit on the number of waivers you put in. This also applies to the next area, questions. Disclaimer for the questions area, our system automatically asks questions such as location, address, first name, last name. Any sort of basic contact info is automatically covered by the system. The questions area is only for additional information. These are information that is unique to your association or unique to certain packages or divisions. It's not made to be your information just that is supposed to be generally taken down. You do not need to create questions for your last name, first name, birth date. All of that is automatically done by the system. Questions are very similar, and like before, you can see that there are some questions already added by the governing body. We can just come in here and add a new record for this. Once again, we can choose the registration type, put in what the question is, as simple as, what is your favorite color? Mark what type of question. There are multiple, everything from text entry to radio buttons, checkboxes, drop-down list of provinces, text entry single and multiple line. Whether it's a text entry box, a password field doesn't show what's being written, a number field, a date-only email type, so on and so forth. Whether it's required, even if it is required, what the error message that will appear if they do not fill it out. Once you're happy with all of that, you can hit submit, and this question will be added to the information they have to fill out upon registering. In addition to all this, you can even set specific questions to packages and divisions. At the moment, they'll always be checked to all, but if you want, you can change it to ask a question to only one division or multiple divisions. You can therefore edit the information and cater it specifically for the information you need for your organization. Once we're happy with the question, we're going to hit submit, and it's been added. Once again, like with the waivers, we can edit and deactivate or delete any questions that we have created ourselves, but we cannot do that for any of the governing body questions. For this governing body season, we've now completed 90% of the things that need to be completed in order for it to be an active season. The very last thing we need to do is go down to the packages and create a package. Coming underneath of here, we go to add packages, and we can view the package type. Again, we're going to be doing it for player, but we have the option to choose staff, official, team, tournament executive, and club executive. We choose what season we're creating it for. We were already on the video season, so it's already populated that for us. What divisions this package is underneath of. We can do multiple at the same time if they have the same price. In this case, we'll just do one of the divisions. Give the package a name. We can give it a description, anything you'd like describing this package. You can just put that underneath of there. Something as far as if this is a AA package, if it is a high quality skilled thing, if you need to be invited. That information can all be provided in the description of said package. The start and end dates of the package. These are the start and end dates that people will be able to register for this package. Outside of these dates, the package will not appear in the system. Additionally, your season won't appear in the system if you don't have any active packages. That might sound a little confusing, but essentially it means that if you've created your packages for everything and they don't start till, let's say, April 15th, and it's currently April 10th, you won't see your season underneath of there. Everything is set up to go, but you won't see anything underneath of there until April 15th. On April 15th, the season will then appear with those packages. So it's very important to know that nothing will appear until you have active packages in the system. You'll be able to view it all in the back end, but on the front end, no one will be able to register until there is at least one active package to register for. It is optional, of course. You do not have to fill in a start date or end date. It is recommended you do so to help control registrations. In addition to that, you can make it a required purchase. This means that they won't have the option to choose between multiple packages. You can put multiple packages underneath of a division. If you want, you can have 3 or 4 packages. You can have different types of packages. You can have add-ons to packages. It's really up to you what you want to do with that information. But if you make it a required purchase, they'll have to choose that one in order to proceed. They can choose more than one, and I'll show that when we get to the front end of the system. You can set a max number of registrations. The system will track how many people have registered for that package, and once it hits its cap, it will deactivate said package. You'll still be able to see it in the system, but on the front end, it'll just show 0 slots. We'll put 5 slots on this one for now. Enable waitlist. Enable waitlist does exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to continue registering for the package after the max number has been reached. However, it will give you a notification when registering that you are registering for a waitlist, and it'll ask you to pay a fee. We recommend you put something in here for multiple reasons. One being that if you're paying by credit card and only credit card, this will allow you to run their credit card for the remaining amount if they do end up becoming part of the package. If a player is moved into it and is actually going to participate in the program, you then have the credit card information to run them for that. In addition, having a waitlist fee gets rid of a lot of just false registrations. People won't register unless they actually want to if there's a $10 registration fee. This waitlist fee will come off their final cost if they do make it into the program. This waitlist fee is not refundable. We don't offer refunds on the waitlist fee. The whole point of a waitlist fee is that you're sacrificing some of the game here to get the chance to be part of the program. You can also require a password. The password can be anything you like. This will mean they'll have to enter this password in order to register. If they don't have the password, they won't be able to register for this package. They will be able to register for other packages if they're available, but this can help limit registrations for things like AA programs, or if you have a period of time where you only let previous members register. You can send out an email with information of the password, give that to your members, and then once that time has passed, you can come back in here and turn off the password functionality, and anyone will be able to register for that package. And lastly, after talking about all of that, we have the actual price of the package. The price of the package is what people will pay for, what they'll see when they go to register, unless the package is already full, in which case they would see the waitlist fee. You can enter whatever the cost of the package is, so let's say $290. And at this point, we could submit it and move on. However, if you have credit card enabled, you can also do split payments. What split payments will do is it'll ask you for an initial charge amount. You do have to set an initial charge amount for them to verify that they have a good credit card. So this could be something like $90 on the $290. And then with the remaining amount, so $290 minus $90 leaves $200 that still needs to be paid. You can say how many split payments you want to give them for that. Let's say 2. They'll need to make 2 payments of $100, and you can set the date that those payments will come out of their account. The credit card information has already been saved securely in our system, so you'll just run that card for those other 2 charges on the dates that you set in the system. If you don't want to do split payments, that's also perfectly fine. Just uncheck that option and hit submit, and we're done with setting up a package for Division 1. We're going to quickly create one more package, just quickly go back over that, and so that we can view it on the front end in a moment. And once again, we won't set anything, and we'll just put in a very basic price in there of $15 and hit submit. And that one, because we checked off both divisions, appears twice. Following everything that we just did, we did the minimal amount of work to actually set up our registration. We added a waiver, a question, and went in there and put in a package. There is one last thing we have to do before we can proceed, and that's put in a refund policy. Everyone needs a refund policy, and this can be as simple as a single line or as long as a paragraph or a full page of text. You're going to want to drop in a paragraph or whatever your refund policy is, hit submit, and that refund policy has now been added to your account, and you're good to go. If we go to the front end of the system, again, that link's in the top right corner here, or if we go to the dashboard, we can get it from there. It'll take us to our front end page where we'll see the name of our organization, and your members will be able to sign in or create an account if they've never signed in with us before and register with the organization. After signing in on that previous page, they'll be able to see their account underneath of this organization, as well as view any outstanding balances they have, whether it be from this organization or another. RAMP registration accounts work across any RAMP client. Their account information will carry over. However, they will only be able to register through your portal for your organization. If organization A is a hockey organization, they can go to their unique portal and register for them. And then if their child plays lacrosse and that lacrosse organization also uses RAMP, they can use their same login and password and go and register for lacrosse underneath of the lacrosse portal. It is a separate link, hence why each organization has that unique link in the top corner as well as on the dashboard. Going back to the registration process, when you go to register, there's a giant button right there for them to click on to register as a participant. You would also see buttons here for staff, official, executive, team, or tournament based on what was turned on and what is active. At the moment, the only thing active for this one, though, is the participant. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to register as a participant. So we're going to choose which season. We're going to choose the video season from the governing body. We're going to choose which family member to register. Because I've already registered individuals, they've been saved under my account, so we're going to register John Doe, and so instead of me having to refill in all that information, it's already been saved. And I'm going to choose what division I'm going to register him under. In this case, we're going to do Division 1, and we can see there's the regular package for $290. 5 of 5 are available. There's the description for it, as well as Package 2. Package 2 I do not have to choose. I can just proceed without it, but if I want, I can even register for Package 2 as well. After choosing which packages I'm going to register for, I can see my waivers. So here's my waivers. The first one is the governing body waiver, and then the waiver that we added earlier. We can then sign using this field right here, mark off that we are the age of majority or the parent/guardian, and hit continue. And now we can add our parent-guardian emergency contact details. Once again, this dropdown will let me choose from any one that already exists, so I can choose the guardian that I've already filled out or family member that already exists for this. I can see that information, and I can even fill out a second parent-guardian if I want. Or I can simply hit continue and move to the questions the system is providing. So once again, there's a question here from the governing body. We can tell that this is a required question by the red outline, as well as the question, the other question that was provided by the governing body. So we're quickly just going to drop a piece of text in there, hit continue, and we get the confirm details page. This is the last page before we submit our registration, where we can confirm all the information on the page. Scrolling down, we can see what we're paying for, and we can choose our payment type. We had two chosen there, cash and credit card. We're going to choose cash in this case, and going to submit the registration. And just like that, we have registered for this program underneath of the governing body. That's all there is to the registration process in the most basic sense. We will now go through the additional details of the system. There's far more and far more reaching things that the system can do that we have not gone over yet, things like map boundaries that we're going to cover next, but this should give you a good start on the RAMP registration system and at least the basic portion of setup. Going back to the back end of the system, we're now going to go through the entire system in a point-by-point fashion, starting with settings and then seasons, teams, and so on and so forth. There will be occasional jumps around depending on where certain features are if they need to be reviewed, but we're going to just start now with the settings. Underneath of settings, the very first thing we have is the settings. Underneath of settings, we can set email 1, email 2, reply to email 1, and reply to email 2. This is for your mass mailer, which we will take a look at in a little while, as well as we can put in a email signature. This signature will automatically apply to emails coming from the mass mailer without you having to retype it every single time. Carry team balance forward. We'll talk about this a little more when we get to the team registration portion. And automatically activate teams. Again, that's team registration. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then lastly, we have some map settings underneath of here. Default location settings as Canada and default province as Alberta. If we want, we can change those. So if you're a Saskatchewan organization, you can set this to Saskatchewan, and when they're registering, it'll automatically default to that. So on and so forth. You can change this as needed. Next, we have administrators. When viewing administrators, there will always be one main administrator. This will be the credentials that Ramp Interactive has provided to your organization, but you can create additional administrators. These additional administrators can have quite a wide range of functionalities chosen by their login type. A club administrator has lots of the same functionalities as the master administrator, with the exception of not being able to create additional administrators. The transaction administrator has access to all the transactions in the systems and payments and things like that. They cannot, however, edit registration information. They cannot go in and add packages. They cannot go in and create new seasons. They can only look at the transactions that exist, and these are often provided to the treasurers of organizations. So they can go in there, make sure people have paid, look at what's been paid, run the financials for the organization. Next, we have a division administrator. A division administrator obviously handles a single division. So if this administrator is under the Division 1, they will be able to look at everything underneath of Division 1. You can even give them access to more than one division as a division administrator. So if they handle multiple divisions, you just check off those and they can proceed from there. Package administrator can handle packages. They can go in there and view, edit, and create packages. Volunteer administrator manages the volunteer tab. We have not talked about the volunteer tab yet. Go to the description if you'd like to view some more information about the volunteer administrators. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. And lastly, the mail administrator. The mail administrator has the least access in the system. They have the ability to open up the mail tab. The mail tab is a very powerful portion of the system, and we'll talk about that a little more when we get to it. When it comes to creating any administrator, they need to be given the organization login. That would, in this case, would be Ramp Demo. That is not editable. That is the same for everyone underneath of this organization. Next would be their personalized login, their password, a confirmation of the password that has been typed in, the email address, first name and last name of this administrator, and whether or not a password change is required upon the first sign-in. And lastly, you can mark it as active. So once you've done all this, that administrator will be added to your list of administrators underneath of that administrators tab, and we can go in there to edit and view the information of our administrators. Next, underneath of settings, we have the refund policy. This is where you can go to enter the refund policy for your organization. There's not much else to it. The refund policy is exactly what it sounds like. This information is displayed on the login page of your site and just includes the basic information on your refunds. Next, we have positions. You can add positions to your organizations for just about anything. In addition, you can have actually positions for your players. This information is then answered upon the registration process. In order to register staff or executives, you do need to have positions enabled. So you need to add staff positions such as coach, assistant coach, so on and so forth. And for executives, president, vice president, so on and so forth, in order for them to register. For the player, it is an optional functionality, but you can add player positions such as forward, defense, and so on and so forth that can be then filled out when players are registering. Rather than having to add unique questions for this, the system can just take part of it right at that time. This also applies to the governing body system. If your governing body wants you to take staff, executive, or player positions, they will have already provided the positions they want. You can only create staff positions for seasons that you create, which we'll be taking a look at in just a quick second. Next, we have official levels. Official levels are things like the levels in a hockey organization or an umpire, and this is just simply for their registration purposes. You can see what level of official they are when they are registering. Again, like before, the governing body would have to provide these if it's a governing body season. For any seasons you create, you would just go to Add New Record, and you can drop in the official level names that they would choose from when registering. That does it for settings. Next, we're going to be looking at seasons. Underneath of the Seasons tab is 90% of the functionality for your organization. Underneath of this Seasons tab, we can do things like create new seasons, we can edit seasons, we can add the majority of the information that our organization needs for this season of registrations. The only thing we can't do is create packages and manage teams. So we're just going to look at the season creation process. We've already looked at it earlier with the initial setup, so we'll keep it brief here. We can come in here to edit any season that is existing and look at the details of it, such as the age cutoff date and who it was created by. So this season was actually created by the governing body, and we can see the cutoff date for our age ranges. So this age cutoff date is December 31st, 2020. If you need to be 15, you need to be 15 by December 31st of 2020 in order to register for a said division. If there's an age range cutoff, or if the age range cutoff on the higher end is 18, they have to still be 18 by December 31st, 2020. If they turn 19 before that date, they won't be able to register for that division. That may not make sense, but we'll talk about that underneath of Division tab in a little more detail when we get to it. Next, we have the settings. We already talked about this earlier. You have the ability to hide this season in the admin portal. Basically, where we are right now is the admin portal. This is for seasons that are antiquated. If you have a season that's 3 years old, you've already done all of your mock-ups for it. You know that you're resolved, the season was good, you've got all your money. You don't want to be seeing it in your admin anymore. You can hide it in the admin, and it'll just hide all that information. Nothing is ever deleted in this system. It's just hidden. If you do want to go back and view that old information, you can just unhide it, and you can go back in there and run any reports or pull up any financials that you need from it. Moving forward, we have the ability to enable team registration. When you enable team registration, you'll be able to put in a start and end date for the team registration. You're going to be able to enable team join registration, team join registration start date, team join registration end date, and team join max roster. Now, that might seem like a whole lot of information, but we'll kind of break it down here. The first portion is very self-explanatory, the start and end date for team registration. Your team captain will come in the system and be able to register between this start and end date for your organization. Enable team join registration. This allows players to then, once your team has been registered, register to your team. So players often need to register to a team in things like adult leagues. This allows them to do that. They can go in there. There will be a code unique to their team that they'll be provided with once they actually have the team registered with the league. They can register then to that team. They would just go in there, put in their code. They would then see their team pop up and be able to register to it, filling out all the player waivers as well as paying any player level fines. Things like their registration costs, things like their deposit costs, anything like that, similar to a player registration. However, this player registration is automatically tied to the team registration. Team invite, join registration end date. This is the end date and obviously the start date for players to register to their teams. And team join max roster size. This will limit the size of the team that can be created through this system. If you set it to 20, only 20 players can ever register to a team. Once 20 players have registered to that team, they won't be able to register any more players. Team join limit registration to one team. This essentially limits a player to registering to one team. There are workarounds for this, obviously. They could go and create a new account or something like that. However, that would obviously be fraudulent. This will limit their player profile to registering with one team. Take team jersey colors, top and bottom. This allows the team, upon team registration, the team captain can set what their jersey colors are for their team. This can then be used by the organization to track what colors the teams use. So if you have teams that are matching up, knowing that certain teams need to maybe use their away jersey or so on and so forth. And that does it for the team registration portion. We'll talk about the actual registration portion once we get to it. Next, we have the staff registration, which we already talked about earlier on in this video. Simply set the start and end dates for staff registration and ensure you have positions enabled for the staff registration, either through your governing body or through your creation, and they'll be able to register between those dates. Official registration, same as above. They need to have a position or level set in the system, and you need to set a start and end date for that for them to be able to register as an official. Executive registration, the same again as the above two. Set a start and end date for that, and they'll be able to register as executives, assuming you've created positions for them. Enable CRC file upload and enable RAMP Triton Enhanced Online Criminal Record Check. The CRC file upload for staff and officials allows them to upload the PDF or file version of their criminal record check. The RAMP Triton Enhanced Online Criminal Record Check actually allows them to do the criminal record check online at the time of registration. However, there is a fee associated with that. If memory serves, it is currently $50 to do that. They can go in there and they can pay right through the system. If they are using that option, you can choose whether or not the organization will be invoiced by RAMP for the cost of those registrations, or if the staff will pay at the time of registration. So essentially the difference there is either the person who's registering themselves can make that payment, or we will send you an invoice for how many staff used the online criminal record check, and the organization can either collect fees from their staff members or just pay it outright. And apparently I've already been corrected. It's actually $25 plus GST for that criminal record check. Limit user registrations per season. This allows you to limit the number of registrations per season per role. Therefore, a coach or a staff member can only register as a staff member once. A player can only register as a player once per season, so on and so forth. You can't have a player go and register once and then re-register again at a later date, come back into the system, look at their profile, and then register again, say for a different program. They've already registered once as a player, they're done. Their player profile can be adjusted by you from the back end of the system if changes need to be made. They do not need to go in and re-register. Scrolling back up to the top, package options. Essentially, the way that our system works is for player or participant registrations, a package is required in order to register. This is obviously what they pay for, is the package. It's how much it costs. However, for staff, official, team, tournament, and executive registrations, there's a lot of cases where there isn't a payment. So the system is actually designed to allow that to go through without a package being created. If you do create a package, they will then be required to choose a package similar to the player registrations. So for a staff official, if you don't set a package, they can go in there, register as a staff, and not pay a dime. And if you then put a package in there that say costs $25, they won't be able to do that. They will have to choose that package that costs $25, or if there's multiple packages, at least choose one package before they can proceed. What this option here allows you to do is have it both ways. It allows you to create packages, but also allow them to proceed without choosing any of those packages. That might sound very convoluted. It does take a little bit to kind of wrap your head around, but essentially allows you to do it both ways, like I said before. They can both have a package, or they can just proceed without checking off a package. This would need to be checked off for that to work. They need to have this checked off and then have a package in there in order for that option to apply. Next, we have the volunteer option. Underneath of this portion, we'll talk about in more detail when we get to the divisions, but we can set the overarching activation of the volunteer module by enabling it here, as well as setting the number of points that are available and the max fee. So the number of points are the maximum number of points a family can get. So if a family has, for example, 3 children, once they reach 200 points, they won't need to do the volunteering for any more of their children. And then the max fee is the max amount a family can be charged. Lots of times organization will max it out at 2 or 3 kids. So if the fee is, let's say, $100, if they don't want to volunteer, it maxes out at $200. So their 3rd and 4th child won't have that volunteer fee applied if they don't want to do any more volunteering for those 2 children. Next, we have the payment settings. Underneath of the payment settings, we have the ability to hide promo code option from public. When you get to the last page of the registration process, on the front end of the system, there is a promo code field where promo codes can be entered. This will hide that promo code field so it won't be visible to the public. Obviously, if it's not visible, people won't be able to apply promo codes. So this is only if you're not using promo codes and you don't even want that field to appear on the last page. and 1 promo code per account. An account is what a family creates to put their children and their guardian information underneath of. 1 promo code per account means that if they're registering multiple children, or if a family is registering multiple people with an organization, they can only use a promo code once under that account. Once a promo code has been used under that account for this season, they won't be able to use another one. So even if they have another different promo code and they're registering another child, they won't be able to use that promo code. Credit card administration fee and credit card administration fee type. The credit card administration fee is either a dollar amount or percentage value of the total package cost that is added to their final cost. So if it's the dollar amount and you put 5 in there, it'll add $5 to the registration cost. And if it's the percentage value and you put 5 in there, it'll add 5% of the actual package cost. So that's a very important distinction there, as a percentage value is more indicative of what you're going to be run if you have a merchant account. When you have a merchant account, the merchant account's going to charge the organization a certain portion to have online credit card as an option. By having the credit card administration fee in there, you're offsetting that cost to your membership instead of the organization swallowing that cost. Basically, if year over year, if you charged $550 last year and $550 this year for registration, but you added credit card, you're going to actually lose money on the registration this year because of your credit card fees. So this allows you to offset that. Most organizations drop about 3% in there to offset the cost of having online credit card. After this, you can choose which payment options you're going to accept. You have check, cash, online credit card, offline credit card. At the moment, you're not seeing online credit card because you only have offline credit card. If you don't have a merchant account, you can't have online credit card. Vouchers, e-transfers, KidSport, and Jumpstart. To go through these, they're mostly self-explanatory. Check, cash, vouchers, e-transfer, KidSport, and Jumpstart are all what we call offline payment options. These need to be marked as received. Check and cash obviously mean that you're expecting to be paid by check or cash by that individual, most likely in person. Vouchers, you can create vouchers that are unique to the organization. They can choose this option from the payment options. So this could be some sort of thing like executive vouchers. More often than not, that's usually a promo code, but you can create a voucher like that. You can create any sort of voucher that essentially acts almost like just a placeholder, another type instead of cash or check. E-transfer. E-transfer will ask you for the email address that they are going to send the e-transfer to, as well as the answer to the question. Really, they shouldn't even ask a question. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you have the answer to that e-transfer. Once again, this is considered an offline payment option. There's no way for our system to get between an e-transfer. An e-transfer is a bank-to-bank transfer, so all that's happening is that the parent, the guardian, or the individual who's registering is going to send an e-transfer to your organization and whatever email address you want to receive that at, and then you can then deposit that into the organization's bank account. Because our system can't get in between that, because it's a bank-to-bank transfer, you will need to mark that as received in the system at the same time as you receive it. There's no way for us to know that you have received that e-transfer. You have to actually manually set it as a received payment, the same you would as a cash or a check payment. The last two are KidSport and Jumpstart. It will currently ask you to put in a KidSport or Jumpstart number. However, we don't have access to know if these numbers are currently good, so you do have to do the legwork to verify that they are going to get the KidSport or Jumpstart funds. You need to get that funds from those organizations. We are looking at possibly partnering with those organizations, but that would then require them to partner with us and give us access to that information. So that's not something we currently offer. That's something that may come down the line depending on how conversations with those organizations go. Next, we have Respect in Sport and NCCP. Respect in Sport will ask you to enter a Respect in Sport number. It will try and verify that that Respect in Sport number is good, and by that I mean it will check that is the right number of digits and so on and so forth. Like with the above two, there's no way for our system to double check that Respect in Sport is good. And lastly, NCCP, which is coaching criteria. Once again, this will just give you an option to put in your NCCP criteria. There's no way for our system to actually check that at the moment. Once again, something that we would like to change in the future, to have that as an automated feature to actually verify that that information is correct or be tied in with the NCCP system. Lastly, underneath of options, we have CC confirmation emails. CCing confirmation emails allows you to CC the confirmation email that your members will receive when they register to an additional email address, usually the registrar's email address. For larger organizations, this is a bit untenable. If you're receiving 10,000 registrations, you don't want to receive 10,000 emails every single time someone registers with your organization. But if you're a small organization, lots of times they'll want to know when someone registers and view that registration information at that time. CCing a confirmation email allows you to do that. You can just enter an email address one line at a time if you want multiple, and you'll be CC'd on those registrations. And then underneath of that, we have the email division admin. We talked about divisional admins earlier. If you want, they can be CC'd on their divisional registrations by checking this off. Scrolling farther down, we have the player options, staff options, official options, and executive options. This is essentially the exact same thing, except for the different registration types. The player does have a few more, so we'll actually just talk about the player one and then quickly look at the others. Underneath of player, we can ask for player position preference. This requires that the governing body or you have added player positions. If it's a governing body season, you won't be able to add those positions. They will have had to be added by the governing body. If it is a season you created, you'll be able to add those positions. Ask for photo, require photo, ask for birth certificate, require birth certificate, ask for treaty card, require treaty card, all very self-explanatory. The difference between the ask for and require is that if you ask for it, it will allow you to proceed without entering that information. If you ask for it and require it, it will then actually force you to put in that information in order for you to register. You won't be able to register unless you actually put something in there. That's the same across all of these other ones. The staff option, the official option, and the executive option are identical to those fields. The next few that are unique to the player options are the ask for parent guardian details. If you uncheck that, it won't actually ask for any parent guardian or emergency contact details, and skip parent guardian details if registrant is 18 or over. So if you're like an adult league or a mixed league, you're going to want to look at these two options. An adult league, you may not want to ask for parent guardian details, and if you're a mixed league, you've got youth as well as adults registering. The skip parent guardian details if 18 or over is a nice one to check off, so that you aren't taking down unnecessary information. Next, we have enable map boundaries and block registrations if out of bounds. We're going to talk about this in a little more detail, but we have a map functionality that essentially allows you to, if someone is out of bounds for the local organization that you are, it can prevent them from registering or at least alert you if they are out of bounds for your organization if you just check off the enabled map boundaries and not the block registration if out of bounds. Obviously, the block registration will straight up prevent them from registering with an address outside of your boundaries. Scrolling further down, we have the privacy policy. Again, this similar to the refund, can just be filled out as needed. Check info, e-transfer, both of these only need to be filled out if you're using those payment options. If you aren't using either of those payment options, then it doesn't matter. You don't need to fill out these areas. This is just where you can provide some more information, things like who the check needs to be made out to, or additional information about the e-transfer, like how long after registration e-transfer needs to be provided by, information that needs to be in the e-transfer, things like who is the e-transfer coming from and what player is it for. That sort of information is usually very prudent. Map info, so this is information for out of bounds. If you're using the map system and there's an out of bounds registration, this message will appear to them. At the moment, there is again a placeholder message that's along the lines of this registration is currently out of bounds, but you can personalize this message to let them know to contact someone from your organization or give you a call at a certain number if they have done so. The last portion here is basically the exact same thing, just again for the different registration types. Participant success message, participant success email. The difference between these two, the success message is a pre-generated message that appears when you finish registering. This is along the lines of thank you for registering, and the success email comes at the top of the confirmation email. You can edit these two things by adding text in here. You can add the success message to say something different, or you can add more information to that confirmation email. The confirmation email will always display the same information about what they've registered for, how much it costs, so on and so forth. This will just add more text to it, being information like thank you for registering, here are our tryout dates, here's information about the organization, so on and so forth. And that's the exact same across staff, official, team, and executive. These are just different drop downs allowing you to change the message unique to each one. And once you're happy with all that, you can hit submit and save your season details if you've updated them, or if you are adding a season, add them that way. After hitting the submit button, it'll bring you back to this page. This is the overview page for your seasons. So on this page, we can actually see the seasons that currently exist. We mentioned this earlier, but you can actually see whether a season is being pushed down by a governing body, if you fall underneath of our governing body program, or if it's a season that was created by you. Once again, I will reiterate, depending on your organization, any organization can come in here and create additional seasons, whether it be for their regular registration or camps. However, if you fall underneath of a governing body that's partnered with RAMP, you must use your governing body season for your regular registrations, as that information will then populate up to your governing body. And you can see that it's from the governing body based on the information that is in the brackets here. So this one is the video season that is made by the RAMP video governing body. Meanwhile, this club level season is from the RAMP video demo, and that's the name of this club, is the RAMP video demo. So this is a season that was created by the club. This is a season that was created by the governing body, and all of your regular registrations should go underneath of that governing body. Meanwhile, your club level season here would be things that are outside of the governing body, camps or clinics that you're running that have nothing to do with the governing body, for example. Obviously, if you don't fall underneath of our governing body system, you would create just a season for your regular registration, the same way you would for a camp or clinic. It's very important that you understand the difference there. There's even a red reminder here, because if you do mess that up and you're underneath of a governing body, you will run into problems that will then need to be resolved between us and you and the governing body. So don't be someone that makes that mistake. Make sure if you're underneath of a governing body, you're using the governing body registration. Looking at some other functionalities on this page, we mentioned the hidden functionality earlier. You can also just use the buttons here to hide your seasons. So these two seasons are now hidden within the admin. Anywhere you were going to go, if it was transactions, if it was registrations, you wouldn't be able to pull these up. Again, that's kind of just how you archive old seasons so that they aren't cluttering your system. We're going to unhide those as we're going to be looking at them. You can also disable seasons and view their disable date from here. So this is a governing body season, so they set the disable date at the top level. There isn't a disable date on this system, but anytime we can disable it by clicking this. The season is now disabled. It won't appear in the front end anywhere. It still appears perfectly fine in the back end, but it is disabled on the front end for taking new registrations. To add a new season, we just click the Add New Record button. We can also do a new season copy and a season-to-season copy items. What is the difference between those two? Well, a new season copy will carbon copy everything from one season to a new season. The benefit of that is if you don't have any changes in most of your documentation, it basically allows you to just roll everything forward into a new season, fresh season, and you can say how many days you just want to move forward the dates. So if you want to move forward all your package dates and everything, all of it stayed the same, all your package prices have stayed the same. You can choose which season you want to copy that from. It has to be a season that you created, not a governing body. How many days to add? Give it a name. Hit submit. And all that information has just been copied from one season to a brand new season, and even goes over what is copied right here. And when we hit submit, it's done. Tells you what was copied over, and you can go back and just like that, underneath of your seasons, the club season 2021 is a duplicate of the previous season that now exists underneath of your system. This doesn't copy over any registration information from the previous year. It just gives you a carbon copy of all the registration information so that you're good to start registration for your new season, for your new year. Looking at the other button, the season-to-season copy items, this just allows you, if you already have a season that's existing, to copy items from one season to another. And this will actually allow you to do it from a governing body season, because you may have things like questions or waivers or packages you'd like to copy to another one. You simply choose what you'd like to copy over from one to another, hit continue, and it'll ask you what you'd like to bring over. If you'd like to ignore or add new record for certain things as well, things like divisions if they aren't already in the system, or tiers if they aren't already existing in the new one, it'll ask you if you want to bring that over. But that's what those two buttons do. They allow you to bring over They allow you to either bring over an entirely new season from an old season, or copy items from one already existing season to another already existing season. Lastly, we'll just take one quick look at some of the differences between a governing body season setup and a regular season setup, or a club level season setup. If we scroll down in here, everything is entirely identical except for the age cutoff date. For a governing body season, this is set by the governing body. For your season, you set the age cutoff date. So this is the cutoff date. If you apply age ranges to any of your divisions, that it will check that they are younger than, or if they're older than. If someone needs to be between the ages of 15 and 18, and you set it for December 31st, 2020, it's going to check to see if they are going to be 15 by December 31st, 2020, or if they are still going to be 18 based on that date. So if they don't turn 15 by December 31st, 2020, then they can't register for that division. If they're going to turn 19 before December 31st of 2020, then again, they can't register for that division. They have to be between the ages of 15 and 18 on that date. That is the only difference between the two season setups. That, and you can't delete or deactivate a season that has been created by your governing body. Additionally, you may notice that there isn't a trash can next to this club level season that was created by you, but there is one next to this new season. Once a registration has gone through the system for a season, you can no longer delete that season, as there is information tied to that season. You can always hide it from the admin if it's an old season, but you can no longer delete it. Because this new season hasn't had anything added to it, we can just delete the entire season and get rid of all the information underneath of it, because there is no player registration staff or official registrations underneath of it. That covers the season creation, editing, deletion, and just the season overview page. We're now going to move on to tiers and divisions. It's going to make more sense to start with divisions. Underneath of the Divisions tab, similar to the Seasons page, you can view all the divisions underneath of a specific season. If it's a governing body season, you can come in here and view the governing body season division information, as well as do things like enable the volunteer module and override provincial age range settings. Now, if you are going to override the provincial age range settings, they are going to know that you did that, and you should have cleared that with them beforehand, because if you haven't, you're going to run into problems. Obviously, the governing body is going to be very upset, or the provincial body is going to be very upset if you override their age ranges without a reason. If you do set your age range criteria differently, you can come in here to set the minimum age as well as the maximum age, and like we had talked about before, your age range cutoff date will apply to these ages. You can set that age range cutoff date underneath of your season settings, which we looked at earlier, and we'll take another look at here in just one quick second by going to the seasons, and editing the season, and going down to the cutoff date. In this case, it was a governing body season, so it's already been set by the governing body. But if we go to a season that you have created, you'll be able to set that underneath of the settings tab here and set that age cutoff date. Again, that's underneath of the seasons page, and you just edit the season to get there. So going back to that division, we can set the age range underneath of here as something different. We can set it to 18 to 19, or 15 to 19 instead of 15 to 18. We can also block registrations out of age range. Basically, the way that this system works is that if you do not block it, they will simply receive a out of age range message warning them they are out of the age range. And if we block it, it will prevent them from registering if they are outside of that age range. Then you can enter your out of age range message here. There is a pre-generated message, essentially just saying you're registering out of age range, but you can customizing it by putting information in here. You can get them to give you a call, put whatever information you want in there by just typing into this text box. Circling back up to the volunteer module, if you've enabled the volunteer module and set up that underneath of the season settings, you can add the volunteer opt-out fee as well as the volunteer points required. We'll talk about that in a few moments in a little more detail. So we've just updated the age ranges for that division. Let's go add a division now. For governing body seasons, we cannot add a record. We can only add a record to seasons we've created. We also have the ability to edit and delete these divisions underneath of these clubs, assuming there hasn't been, once again, a registration underneath of that division. We can view some details about these divisions from this divisions page, so we can see what seasons it's underneath of, what the division is called, how many packages are underneath that division, as well as adjust the display order. What this does is it lets you rearrange the divisions as they're displayed underneath of the division dropdown. So if you want to do it from like youngest, oldest, or something like that, you can just simply change the numbers and they'll always display top to bottom, lowest to highest. And it does not have to be numerically in order. You can go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can also go 0, 5, 10, 15, and they would arrange in the exact same fashion from lowest to highest. In this case, let's just add quickly a new division. We're going to give it a name. We're going to call it Division 2. Underneath of this season, we can give it a description. We could add some description to this division. The minimum and maximum roster sizes. When you're creating teams of the players that have registered underneath of player registrations, you can set a minimum and max roster size for this division. Therefore, you can see what how many players and limits the number of players that are registered to each team. This is more so applied at the governing body level than at the club level. The governing body can be pushing down a minimum and maximum roster size for these teams, and we'll be able to see if you're outside of those minimum and maximum roster sizes. If you're a club though and you want to do this, you can also do it as well. You can set your minimum and maximum roster size and go from there. I think it's very important to note that this has nothing to do with team registration. This is for assigning players to teams after they have registered, much more common in minor sports. Team registration is for actually registering a team to an organization. So for example, adult league often takes team registrations. A team will register themselves with the league, register their players, they're bringing their own players, and then the players register to the team that you've already created. They're already a team themselves. In this case, we're looking at more of a minor sports thing where your players will register and then there will be something like tryouts or evaluations, and then teams will be made up of those players that registered underneath of this division at a later time. And you can set the roster sizes for those teams that are going to be created at a later time at this point in time. Not that I've said time enough, we'll move on to the next thing after the minimum and maximum roster, the Enable Volunteer module. Enabling or disabling the volunteer module will basically, again, allow you to add volunteer fees. If people do not sign up for enough jobs underneath of the volunteer jobs, they will be required to pay an additional fee. We'll talk about this in a little more detail in just a quick second. We're just going to quickly scroll down to the last couple of items here underneath of the divisions area, and that is the age range and the tiers. Age ranges are the age range criteria that we've already looked at previously. You can set the maximum and minimum age that will look at your age cutoff, and you can block registrations outside of age range, or you can allow them. Either way, they're going to get a out of age range message if they're registered outside of their age range. So in this case, let's just set it for like 15 to 18. If they're outside of that age range and they try and register, they'll get whatever message is in here. If there's no message in here, they'll simply get a pre-generated one saying you are outside of the age range. If you choose to block the registration, they won't even be able to proceed at this point. If you do not block it, they'll still be able to register. However, there will be a mark on their registration that they are a out of bounds registration. If it's a governing body, they'll be able to pull that up, and as a club, you'll also be able to pull that up. Lastly, we have tiers. So divisions can have tiers, and if you don't have any tiers set up, we can add a new record. A tier is simply another way of breaking up the information. So it's basically a step after the division, and it can be anything from AA to AAA to single A, so on and so forth. Whatever you want to make it, it can be. This isn't something that they check off at the time of registering. This is something that gets used for team assignments. So if we set AA tier underneath of this division, when we're creating teams, we can put teams underneath of that AA tier, and so on and so forth. It does not actually get chosen at the time of registering. If we want to view the tiers that exist per division, we can come underneath of the Tiers tab, and we can see those tiers here. So we can see that underneath of this season, there's a AA tier that is being used by one of your divisions. We can also create additional tiers for that season just by going to the Add New Record and putting in the tier name, and then any divisions going forward will be able to choose from that available tier. Any divisions that are created going forward, that is. Additionally, like with the Seasons and Divisions page, you have the ability to deactivate and activate these tiers, as well as edit and delete them from this page. If we go and look at the Divisions area, it's the exact same thing. We can edit, delete, and deactivate using the buttons here. Circling back to what I had mentioned earlier, the volunteer fees. The volunteer setup is something that is a bit confusing and isn't used by a ton of organizations, but does serve its purpose. So if we go underneath of the club season setup, we can turn on the volunteer module. The volunteer module will allow us to, by division, set a number of points that need to be earned and the volunteer fee. So underneath of the season settings, we're going to set the caps for that. So these are the maximum number of points for a family or an account and the maximum fee they can pay. So the maximum family points, we could say something like 10. Once they reach those 10 points, they don't need any more, and any additional registrations after that won't have to do volunteer. So for example, if a family has 4 children and child 1 does 5 points and child 2 does 5 points of volunteering during their registration process, childs 3 and 4 won't even see the volunteer module because you've already met the family cap of 10. For the max fee, it's similar to the maximum number of points, whichever is really reached first, but if there's, let's say, $100 cap on the amount of money a family can be charged if they're not going to volunteer. If the first child is $50, the second child is $50, and the third child is now another $50, they won't see that additional fee for the third and fourth child. These fees are only applied if the family chooses not to volunteer. The whole point of this system is that if a family says up front they don't want to do any volunteering with the organization, they'll be charged an additional amount of money on their registration. Once you've set the caps for this system or left it blank to leave them unlimited, you're going to hit Submit underneath of the season setup and go to your divisions. And during your division setup, like we had looked at earlier, we can enable the volunteer module. We'll do it for the same season we were just looking at. So underneath of the 2021 season, we're going to edit, enable the volunteer module, and set the opt-out fee and number of points required in order for them not to pay that opt-out fee. So if we want to make it $50, we can set that as $50 there and say how many points they need not to have to pay that $50. So when they're going to register, they're going to be able to choose from a list of volunteer jobs that you create, and each job will have a point value associated with it. If the required number of points is 5, and the jobs are 5 points, 3 points, and 2 points, say the 3-point job is a bingo, the 2-point job is working at the tournament, and the 5-point job is coaching the team, they can choose from those volunteer options and get a certain number of points based on what they choose. So if they chose to coach, that's 5 points. They will not be charged the $50 opt-out fee. If they choose to both do a bingo and to work the tournament, that's also 5 points. They won't have to pay the volunteer opt-out fee. If they do not choose the total 5 points, they will still have to pay that opt-out fee possibly. I believe at the moment the system, as long as they choose something, won't charge them that opt-out fee. However, it will be marked that they didn't do the minimum number of points. So therefore, then you as an organization can decide whether or not they're cleared for that $50 or if they have to pay that $50. So we're going to set that in the settings there, and that has now been applied to that division. Anyone underneath this division registering will need to pay that $50 or do 5 points of volunteer jobs. You can set those jobs underneath of the volunteer jobs tab. Underneath the volunteer jobs tab, we simply go add new record, give it a name, description, how many points it's worth, and the max number of positions that can be filled for this. So for something like a coaching position, there's only a limited number of coaching positions. So for a head coach, there might only be 5 teams. There can only be 5 people who take those points. You can also do this by division. So if you want, you can set different jobs for different divisions based on what you want them to have access to. So we can say something like coach for division 2, and it's worth 5 points. And the max number is 2. Hit submit, and now for division 2, there's the job of coach that's worth 5 points. If someone chooses that, they won't have to pay that opt-out fee of $50. It's a bit of an old school system, but does accomplish what it means to accomplish, and you can even create a unique volunteer administrator to manage all of this, manage the creation of the volunteer fees, manage the points, and manage the job creation, and then additionally manage the actual volunteer jobs after the fact and make sure that that's actually being done for those individuals. They're actually meeting the criteria that they said they would do. And they can just come under here underneath the administrator to create that for your organization, create that volunteer administrator. Moving on from divisions and tiers, we're going to look at checklists. Checklists are an internal system that allows you to create a checklist, essentially. So for a player registration, for example, you can enter things like they have come in and submitted any additional paperwork they needed to. They are within bounds. They are a previous registrant. All of these things can be put in here as information, as simple as something like their favorite color is blue. This will appear underneath of their player profile as a checkbox that can be checked off. These checklists are entirely in the back end. They do not appear on the front end, but they just allow you to add these checkboxes for your own registrar's use in the back end of the system. They do nothing else other than that, but you can create them for whatever type of registration you want. So if you only create one right now, it'll add their favorite color is blue, but you can create ones for staff, for official, for team, for tournament and club executive. Again, this does nothing on the front end. It's just a checklist in the back that gets added to the profiles, either be it a player, a team, or a official or staff. It just gets added to their registration profile and can be gone in there and checked off by you. Similar to what we've looked at before, the interface is identical to things like division tiers and seasons. You can edit, delete, and deactivate or activate a checklist item, as well as rearrange them with the display order, again, lowest to highest, top to bottom. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0 be at the top, 5 at the bottom, so on and so forth. Next we have promo codes. Promo codes allow you to create promo codes that can be used at the end of the registration process to take an amount off of the registration cost. There's a promo code field at the very last page that allows you to enter any promo codes that have been created. Those promo codes would have been provided to them beforehand, and they'll be able to have that amount taken off of their registration. Let's add a promo code to see what it looks like. So it's going to ask us what season, what we're going to call the code. So this is what they're going to have to put in. So it could be something like 15%. So in this case, there's an actual space inside of it. It would read that, so 15%, and they would get the amount of 15% off. You can also have promo codes that actually add a cost to an amount. If you uncheck this is a discount code, it will actually add 15% to their outstanding cost. I've yet to see this get used in that way, but it is an option that you have. You can also set a maximum amount for a discount. This only applies more so to the percentage value. If you're doing a dollar amount, the discount will be whatever amount you put in there. So if the discount is $50, you've set it to $50, that's going to take $50 off. If you were to put a maximum amount of 25 in here, it would limit them to 25, but then it's basically just a $25 discount instead of a $50 discount. It's kind of redundant to do that for a dollar amount discount. It's really only for the percentage value. You set a percentage value, you can say it's 50% off up to, say, $500. After $500, it won't increase anymore. It's 50% off up to that amount, or 15% off up to $500. whatever you like. You can also set whether this code is a single lifetime use. A single lifetime use code will only ever work once. They can give it to all their friends, but it will only work the first time it's used. So if I go into the system, I use this code, this 15% code, it'll only work for me. No one else will ever be able to use it. A single account use code will be able to be used by an account one time, but it can be used by any account underneath of that season. So under this club season 2021, anyone can use this account once. If you don't limit it to a single account use, if they were registering 4 kids, they could use this code on every single kid. They could use it 4 times, once for each registration. With the single account use, they'll only be able to use it once per account. Lastly, we have the active button. This chooses whether or not it's an active or inactive code. So you can turn codes on for periods of time. For example, some people do an early bird this way. Some people also do it through their packages, but if you want, you could have an early bird promo code and you just deactivate it when the early bird time period has fallen. We don't recommend using that option because people will forget to use the promo code, then get angry and call your organization asking for the code or asking for a change and ends up making more legwork. There's a better way to do that, and we'll talk about that underneath of the Packages tab, but you can do that if you so desire. Basically, the activate and deactivate just chooses whether or not the promo code will work when they go to use it. Additionally, you can also choose whether or not this promo code applies to all or only some of your divisions. By unchecking this all divisions, it'll give you a list of the divisions underneath of this season, and you can choose which divisions this promo code applies to, whether it be all of them, some of them, or none of them. If it applies to none of them, then the promo code doesn't really work, but that is an option as well. You can hit submit, and that promo code now exists. You have the ability to deactivate it, edit it, and delete it, just like with everything else in the system. Next, we have vouchers. Vouchers work like an additional offline payment option. Essentially lets you create any sort of payment option you want. It'll simply act like an offline payment option, though. They need to be marked as received, but they let you come in here, add a piece of text. So right now, the most common offline payment options are cash and check, but you could add something additional in here, like previous board member. You could also use a promo code for something like this to give them 100% discount off, but this will essentially allow them to choose that as a voucher option, given that vouchers are turned on underneath of your season settings, and they can choose that payment option instead of cash, credit card, check, so on and so forth. Like with other options, we can activate, deactivate, and edit it. That's really all vouchers do. They don't have any other special functionality. They just let you add another offline payment option underneath of the system to choose from. Next, we have waivers. We've already talked about waivers during the initial setup phase. We'll take another quick look at them. Here's the initial waivers setup page. The waiver setup page here just includes the information of the waiver, what division it's underneath of, if it's specific to a division. If it's just underneath the entire season, it won't specify a division, it's just underneath all of them, and the registration type. So you can have registration waivers for player, staff, team, really anything you want, you can have a unique waiver for, and you can have as many waivers as you'd like. You can have code of conduct waivers, you can have liability waivers, any sort of waiver you want, you can view underneath of here. For governing bodies, governing body seasons, you will also see the governing body waivers, but you will not be able to edit or delete those. You can see that there are some waivers underneath of this governing body season, and you do not have access to edit or delete them. You do have the ability to edit the display order of your waivers, changing the number underneath of this display order area. This just changes the order they're sorted in, lowest to highest, top to bottom. So 0 to 10 or 0 to whatever you want. 0 will always be at the top, the lowest number at the bottom, so on and so forth. If we want to edit or delete, we can do that with this interface. In this case, we're just going to quickly add a new record. We're going to choose the registration type. We're going to stick with player. We're going to give it a name. Just call it waiver 2. We can require an individual signature on this waiver. This will add another signature field underneath this waiver that they'll have to sign online using their mouse instead of just using a single signature field at the very bottom. We can mark whether or not it's an active waiver and choose what divisions it's underneath of. Once we're happy with all of our settings, we will paste in or type in our actual waiver and hit submit. And just like that, we've created a new waiver. If we want to do that for a staff registration or a team registration, the exact same process is repeated. We just choose whichever registration type we want. So if it's for staff, we would choose the registration type as staff, and we're now creating a staff waiver instead of a player waiver. Next, we have the Questions tab. Underneath of questions, we have a list of all of the questions that have been created for the season, as well as the ability to edit, delete, or deactivate them, as well as the ability to order them from top to bottom using the display order function, lowest to highest, top to bottom, so on and so forth. You can also view by season the different questions. Underneath of the governing body season, you will see your governing body questions as well, but you will not have the ability to edit or delete those. To add a new question, we're just going to click on the Add New Record button, and this gives us the ability to add additional questions to our system. The first thing it's going to ask is the registration type. So this can be a player, staff, official, team, tournament, or club executive question. Based on the registration type, this question will only appear for that registration. Put in what the question is. And then we can choose the type of question. The first type and the most basic is a text entry or single line. This is basically just a text box that they can fill out. We can even change the text type though. So depending on the question, we can make it a password field, number only, date only, email only, or time only. We can also mark off that it is required, that it is active. If it is a required question, it needs to be answered in order for them to proceed, and you can put in a message that will appear if they try to proceed without filling out the question. We can also set the question to be by a specific division or even a specific package. So we can choose from all of our packages which one this question will be applied to, and we can even choose by division if it only applies to a single division or if this question applies to multiple divisions. The other types of questions can be text entry multiple line. This is similar to the single line, but now will be a text box with more space for them to answer. A drop-down list. This will give you a drop-down list that they'll be able to choose a single answer from. You can insert a blank option that is not choosable at the top of the list, so they are actually forced to open it up and choose a option. You can then put in as many options as you want for that checkbox. You can set the drop-down option as a default if you don't want to have a blank option at the top, and they will display in the order that they're entered unless you put in a different display order here. You may notice that there is a answer FR and answer MX. This is for answers in French and Spanish if you have your system set up in a multilingual fashion. The systems are normally only set up in English unless that has been predetermined beforehand to enable other functionality. You also have the email to field. The email to field allows you to have this answer to the question emailed to a specific person based on your answer. This sometimes applies to official registrations, where an official may be answering a question based on what part of a city they live in or what region they live in, and the email will go to their respective head of their division or their region or their location. And that email can be whatever email address you want. So you can have 4 different emails in here for the 4 different region directors, and based on your answer during official registration, they'll get an email about your registration to that email address. The same goes for the radio button option. It's exactly identical, except instead of a drop-down option, you see all the options listed and choose a radio button for that question. Checkbox single, a single checkbox that you just agree to essentially for the question. Checkbox multiple. This option is a little different than the radio button because you can check multiple boxes off. So you could have a list of 5 options. They could check off 3 or 4 or just 1. And if it's not a required question, they could check off none and proceed. And then lastly, we have a drop-down list of provinces. They can choose which province they are part of. I believe it's also a good time to mention that certain questions are asked during the registration process automatically. Basic contact info is already asked. This is for additional questions that are outside the scope of your registration. These are any sort of additional questions that are unique to your association or sport that have nothing to do with basic profile information, such as the phone number, email address, name, birth date, or photo, birth certificate, anything like that. That's already handled. This is for additional items, additional unique questions. Next we have tournaments. Underneath of the Tournaments tab, you can add tournaments as an option for registration. Simply come underneath of here and click the Add New Record button. Give the tournament a name. You can add a description, admin emails, start date, end date, max roster, and then check off what division or divisions this tournament falls underneath of. It's basically like setting up a mini season. Unlike team registration and unlike participant registration, tournament registration simply takes down the tournament name but also has them fill in their roster. It does not require the players to register separately. Most tournaments hosted by minor sports or something like that, they already have the team rosters and everything like that built. There's no need for the players to register with the organization. All you need is the team to register and pay whatever team fees are required. Just like that, we have created this tournament underneath that division. Tournament registration would now technically be open, but we can go ahead and add some things to this tournament registration just like we would any other. We can go to Waivers and add a waiver underneath of the tournament type, and then choose our tournament. We can go to questions and add unique questions to this tournament. Once again, just choosing the tournament type and selecting that tournament allows us to add questions in the registration process for this tournament. And going forward, the only other big one would be packages. You can come in and add packages for this tournament. Simply choose the type as the tournament, and then select the tournament that this applies to. And the same as anything else, as adding registration information for players, coaches, or officials, you just add that information for the tournament and people can register for said tournament. A very simple way of doing tournament registration. After tournaments, we have boundaries. We talked about boundaries briefly when we were looking at the season settings. When you're in the season settings, you can turn on the boundaries function. So that's under the season settings. We can go down to the player options and enable map boundaries. We can also block registrations if out of bounds. This will prevent them from registering if they're out of the boundaries we've set on our map. If we leave this unblocked, they will just get a warning that they are out of bounds, but still be allowed to finish registering. Going back to the Boundaries tab, we can set a default map boundary to use going forward, but also create new records of the map boundary. So we can have multiple different sets of map boundaries that are preset that we can choose from, rather than having to make a new one each time. We can also set our default city that the map is placed on in Google Maps, and check any addresses and see if they fall within the boundaries that we have currently set. Now, to actually draw the boundaries, you're going to scroll down to this map. In this case, we're going to add a new record, and we're going to pull up the map, and we're going to draw some boundaries. So to draw some boundaries, we're going to click on this little trapezoid symbol, and then when we click on the map, we're going to set a point, and we can drag this to set our boundaries. So if we wanted to, let's say, cover this northwest portion of metropolitan Edmonton, we'll go down to wherever our cutoff street is, across, up, and close whatever shape we've created. And once we're happy with our shape, give it a title for this season. So, Northwest Boundaries. And choose what season and what divisions underneath of that season these boundaries apply to. This also allows you to set different boundaries for different divisions underneath of the same season. Hit save once you're happy, and just like that, the Northwest Boundaries is set. We can go and take a look at that. It is for the club level season, and if your registration is outside of these boundaries, you would get a warning when registering. Please keep in mind this is not a retroactive system. It does need to be applied before registrations are taken. If registrations are taken before the boundaries are put in place, it will not check the boundaries for those registrations. But that's it for the boundary system. Simply use the trapezoid system to draw your boundaries. You can draw multiple shapes if need be. So if we have gaps in our boundaries, we can make those gaps, have different areas covered on the same map, or create multiple map records based on our divisions and our seasons. After boundaries, we have volunteer jobs, which we've already covered in the volunteer portion. This is where you go to create your volunteer jobs. You can refer to that section in the description below. Custom file uploads. Earlier, you noticed that you can request things like birth certificates and photos of your player registrations, staff registrations, official registrations. You can also request custom file uploads. Adding to the waivers and questions functionality, these custom file uploads can be pretty much anything you want. Similar to the rest of the system, you simply choose your registration type, give it a name. So for example, if it was something like a soccer card, you could ask for that, and you can ask for what file types are allowed. You could ask for simply a photo, so that would be something like a GIF, PNG, or a JPEG photo type. You can ask for documents, like a Word document, a PDF, a Excel file, a CSV, or even a TXT file. And depending on what you've checked off here, it'll only allow them to upload certain files, and you can also mark it as a required field. And you simply hit submit when you're happy with it, and it'll ask them for that during the registration process. Same way you make questions and waivers, you have the ability to edit, delete, and activate or deactivate it, and you can adjust the display order of these items for any of those registration types we talked about earlier. Fees and discounts. Fees and discounts is where you can go to create fees and discounts. These fees and discounts are applied during the registration process or can be applied retroactively to different accounts. Give the fee or discount a name. So this could be something like the early bird discount. That will be applied to everyone's registration. So we can call it early bird. Choose what division it applies to. Or if we want it to apply to all, leave it on the optional. Choose the fee type. This will choose how it's applied. So for example, the early bird fee or discount can always be charged. So if they're registering multiple children under the same account, it will always be applied. Charge once per account. This means that the account can only be charged or be given this discount once after their first child or the first member of your family has this account fee or discount applied. It can't be applied to that account again. Or once per registrant. Once per registrant is different from always charge. Once per registrant means once per player profile in your account. So if you have 4 kids you're registering, each time you register one of those individuals, it'll be applied. If you then register one of those individuals again underneath of this season, it won't be applied. With the always charged, if you were to register the same person again for a different program underneath of the same season, they would have this fee or discount applied once again. You can also choose the fee target. Everyone is the most common, but you can also have it as a registrant or account, which will allow you to apply it to someone retroactively that's already in the system, or proactively, I believe. You can even put in their name proactively, and when they register, it will apply this discount to them. The proactive portion may not yet be functioning as of the recording of this video, but that is the intent of that functionality. It will be to allow you to actually put in the registrant's name or the account holder's name and actually have that individual have this discount applied proactively before they even register. For the amount, you can set a positive or a negative number in the discount. A positive number is a fee and a negative number is a discount. It even explains that here in this little box, just so you understand that that's the only difference between the two. If it's a negative number, you just drop a negative sign beforehand, put it in there, and a negative value will be taken off of everyone's registrations, for example, for an early bird. Or you can put in a positive number, and the exact same thing will happen. They'll be charged a fee, some sort of fee. It could be something like a league fee or an organization fee. The checkbox down here, exclude different registration types from being charged more than once, essentially allows you to prevent people from having the same fee applied multiple times if they're registering in multiple senses. So some people, for example, both coach and play on adult teams. They don't want to be charged the fee more than once, so that you can exclude different registration types from being charged more than once. So if it's the same person, they don't get charged multiple times. And lastly, we have the start date and end date. We just set the start date and end date for this account, fee, or discount. Similar to any of the other items, the fee will only be applied during and in between the start and end date. If you do not enter a start and end date, it will always be active. And like with everything else, you have the ability to activate, edit, delete, just from this viewing page of the fees and discounts. Lastly, underneath of the seasons, we have locked accounts. Locked accounts is a functionality that allows you to lock people out of registering with your organization. You do this by either pulling them up in your system, by searching up existing accounts and checking them off to submit them and let them know that they are locked out. This can be for things such as not paying their fees, or if they have done something egregious against your organization, you can prevent this account from ever registering with you again and mark the registrant as well. Please keep in mind there is technically a workaround. They could always just create another account and try and get around with that. However, if you've locked them out, they will see that message, and the lockout could be for numerous things. It could simply be they haven't paid their fees and they're locked out until they pay those fees. And when they go to register and sign in, they will see whatever message you set for them. And you can even set a start and end date to lock them out of registering with your organization. You can lock them out for as long or as little as you'd like using this functionality. It's just a good way for making sure that you can follow up on certain people if they aren't getting back to you, or prevent them from registering with your organization in the future. That does it for the Seasons tab. We'll now be moving on to the Teams tab. Underneath of Teams, we have the ability to add, view, and edit your teams. This is also where you'll be able to view teams that have registered from team registration. For teams that register underneath of team registration, we'll be actually doing a separate video that goes more into depth into how team registration works, but you won't be able to do certain things in regards to editing and deleting them. Right now we're just going to look at creating teams to assign players that have registered as a player, or assigning staff to these teams as well. So we're going to create a team. We're going to choose what division, and we can choose what tier this team is under if there were tiers underneath of it. We're going to give it a name. We can give it a description. We can even say what skill level this team is, and we can even mark it as a provincial team. This more so applies if it's a governing body organization. If this is like a governing body team, we can mark it as a provincial team, and that governing body will see it marked as such. For your own use, you could even mark it as a provincial team. However, it's not quite as important as in the governing body system. If it was a governing body season, it would be more important that it's marked off as a provincial team if it is a provincial team. So we're going to hit submit on this team, and we can now view that there is underneath of this season, Team 1. We can view reports on this team, so we can run reports on the players and everyone associated with this team, as well as view the number of players, staff, whether this team is approved or unapproved, and we can edit and delete it. Now in this case, this is a team that's being added by you, so there is no player registrations that go to this team. You assign players to it, so the approved and unapproved does not matter as much. This is more important for the team registration. Teams need to be approved before players can register to said team. But like I said, this is just players that are going to be assigned to these teams, either after tryouts or evaluations. So now that we've created this team, we can assign players to it. So if we go to the Assign Players tab, we can hit View underneath of this division, and we can assign players to this team. That player has now been assigned to Team 1, as you can see here. You can also assign players to unassigned, so if a player is assigned to a team, we can unassign them from said team. If we go back to the Teams tab, you'll now be able to see that there is one player associated with this team, and we can pull up a list of the players that are associated with the team by clicking that button. Again, it's just going to take you to that Assign Players tab we were already on. But you have full control over pulling up players on different teams, and you have search criteria such as using their first name, last name, and even their gender to pull up the players underneath of a certain team. After Assign Players, we also have Assign AP Players. Assign AP Players allows you to assign a player to additional teams to the first team they're assigned to. So this could be cases such as they play for a AA team as well as a home team. Some organizations in rural communities, they pool together players from multiple communities to make a A-level or a AA level team, and so the player can be assigned to that secondary level team using the Assign AP Players. There's also functionality for that where you can have a player that's part of your organization and also part of another organization, but we'll talk about that when we actually get to the registrations and the player profiles area. Underneath of the Assign AP Players, once again, we can just pull up the information of our players and we can assign them to a second team using this. Unfortunately, we didn't create a second team, so we don't have anyone to assign them to. But if we did have another team, we could assign them to an additional team. Assigning staff works the exact same way. You can assign staff to multiple teams. They don't have the same Assign AP. You can just assign the staff to more than one team. If we had a staff registration underneath of here, you'd be able to see that staff member in the exact same process. You simply have a drop down, you choose where you would like to assign them to, and we can assign that staff member to their unique team. Lastly, underneath of teams, we have the team roster size. This is where you can view the number of players that are on a team as well as the minimum and maximum roster numbers for those teams. This is a very important function when it comes to governing bodies. They want to see the minimum and maximum roster and make sure your teams fall underneath of there. You can also include teams that have 0 player counts on this page, but this is essentially just for you as a registrar to review the information and make sure your team rosters match up for what they need to be. And that sums up the Teams tab of the registration system. Next, we have the packages. We've already looked at packages earlier. Underneath of packages, we can view all the packages underneath of a given season. We can change which season we're looking at using these controls, as well as which package types and so on and so forth. We can edit, deactivate, and change the display order of packages from here. In this case, let's just quickly add a new package. We can choose what division or divisions these packages are going to go underneath of. Give the package a name. This could be everything from early bird package to regular package to add-ons, as you can choose more than one package when registering. You can give the package a description, but it's not required. And scrolling down, we have the options to set dates, maximum number of registration, a waitlist, as well as required, and make it a required purchase. So basically, we can set a start date and end date for this package. The package will only appear between said start date and end date. In order for someone to register as a player, there needs to be an open package. That either means that there's a package with open-ended start and end dates, so there isn't even start and end date put in, or it's in between the start and end date of the ones put in here. So you could have the start date being 2 days ago and the end date being a month away. That falls in between there, so that package will then show up. Make this a required purchase means they won't be able to choose it from the list. It'll just already be checked off. They can then choose additional packages if there is the option for additional packages. If there isn't the option for additional packages, they would just proceed with this one, but they could check off more packages if they desire. Max number of registrations, they can put a number in here, and once that max number has been reached, no one will be able to register with this package anymore. They may still be able to see it if the start and end date are open, but it'll be grayed out from being chosen unless you enable the waitlist functionality. If you enable the waitlist, they'll be able to put in their information and register after paying a waitlist fee that you can decide. We recommend putting in a waitlist fee to eliminate people making just fraudulent registrations for the waitlist that they don't really want. Putting in a waitlist fee then gets people to actually think about if they want to really sign up for this program. The waitlist fee does come off of the final cost, so if the package costs $300 and you put a $5 waitlist fee, you only have to charge them the remaining $295. That's all tracked in the system, and we'll take a look at that under the Transactions tab in a little while. And lastly, after the waitlist, we have the require password. The require password means they have to enter a password in order to choose this package. This is good for things like enabling former membership to register first. You can send an email to your membership with the password, and if someone doesn't have the password, they cannot register. And then once that former membership only time period has passed, you can actually turn off the password and anyone could register for this package. Lastly, for the package, you have to set your actual price for it, what people are paying for. So if we make the price $300, that will be the price they see when they go to register. If you want and you're using a credit card, you can even set split payments for this. If you do set split payments, it'll ask you for initial charge amount. You do have to set an amount for the initial charge. And then once you've set that, you can choose how many payments you want to split what's left over into. Once you choose that, the system will automatically divide it into an equal number of payments. So in this case, we chose 4. So it's going to be 4 payments of this amount, and we can set the dates for these payments. And on those dates, their credit card will be run for those payments. This, again, only works for credit card payments, and you'll be able to see all these pending transactions underneath of your transactions area. Once you're happy with everything on this page, you'll simply hit submit, and this package will be added to the system. In regards to the package type, you can be any of the options above. You can make packages for players, staffs, officials, teams, tournaments, and club executives. And they can pay for all of these things based on the packages that you present them. However, for staff, official, team, tournament, and club executives, they do not require a package in order to register. If you don't put a package in there, they can register without one. If you do put one in, though, they will need to choose a package in order to proceed. So that does it for packages. You may notice that this package can be deleted and the others cannot. The reason for that is these packages have registrations underneath of them. Once someone has registered underneath of a package, you no longer have the ability to delete that package. You can change what the package is worth, and the system will retroactively recognize that people who paid for it at the lower price don't have an outstanding balance. So some people, to do their early birds, what they will do is they'll actually just change the price of their only package from an early bird price to a regular price. I would recommend actually creating 2 separate packages and just having the start and end dates change. That way you can actually track using your reports functionality how many people registered for each year over year. If you just change the price, you can't just easily look up as simply the how many people registered for the early bird versus how many registered for the regular cost. You can still do it. It's just a little more tedious, whereas if you do have individual packages, you can just pull up your reports based on those packages. Moving on to the Members tab. Underneath of the Members tab, we can view the members of your association. So whenever someone registers, if they continue to use the same account or to register their children or themselves going forward, you'll have an ID as well as the first and last name for that player, and you'll be able to pull up that member's information. Whether they be a staff, player, tournament representative, you can pull up their registration profile and their history. So we can see the information of this individual, and we can see all the times that they have registered, as well as what team and what information is associated with them. And you can pull this up for all of your members. It gives you a good history of their players' history and how many times they've registered with you year over year. You can view your membership over the last 10 years for specific players. If you use the system that long, you'll be able to have a backlog of all that information. You can even set your matching members underneath of the matching members area. If you pull up members underneath of here that are matching, you can actually then merge them together. So let's say someone had an account, they registered with you, then they didn't for a year, and then they came back and they created a new account instead of using their old account and registered again. You can actually find those matching members with this area and combine them back to be a single member. So you don't end up with someone who's registered 3 times with 3 different accounts. You can merge them into one member so your membership history looks clean and you don't have duplicates. That's what this whole matching members area does. It's a very cool piece of technology that lets you do that. It looks at the names and looks at similarities, so it will pull up cases that are very close together. The same last name, if they were, like, for example, Robert Brad or something like that, and then there was a Bob Brad, it would recognize that Bob is a shortening of Robert, a possible shortening, and that those might be the same person, and give you the option to pull those up and possibly combine the 2 members. Moving on to registrations. Underneath of the registrations tab is where you can pull up all of your registrations, whether it be for players, staff, officials, executives, teams, and tournaments. All of this looks very similar. Essentially, when you click on it, it'll give you a bunch of different criteria controls, everything from season to team to searching by name and last name. But you can come in here and look at by date the players that have registered and pull up their information. You can also print off receipts and receipt PDFs from here, but we're going to actually click on this individual and take a look at their profile. So once we're inside of their profile, we can view everything that was put into the system when they registered, as well as that same receipt PDF and just PDF of their registration. We can send a additional confirmation email if they say they never got it. You can also add additional email addresses in here to receive that confirmation email. We can see the club, team, and position that have all been assigned to them if the position system is being used, as well as any custom file uploads that are applied to them. We can see any additional notes that were put in. These are notes that are added by admins, be it the master admin, club admin, or divisional admin. You can view any notes that have been added to this player's information. So this could be things like they are going to be paying us on a certain date, or there's something about this player, they were injured and they need to be refunded. Things like that can all be saved as notes and then actually pulled up in the system at later dates. The packages that the player is associated with. So in this case, we see that this is the package they're tied to. We can actually turn this off and it'll affect their outstanding balance by changing that. So they no longer are tied to this package, which means they're now going to have a credit against their account once this is marked as received, as they no longer have any package they're associated with. If we reactivate that package, it's going to actually show them as having an outstanding balance of $100 because we have not marked this transaction as received yet. We can even add them to additional packages by choosing the package and clicking Add Package to Registration. So we can have 2, 3, 4, as many packages as we want in here. Or if the player has been moved to a different division with a different package price, we can change which package is associated with them while keeping a history of all the packages they were associated with. We don't want to delete that history. We want to see where they were moved around to. Going back to the transactions, we can see their transactions. We can add an offline transaction, and if there was a merchant account for online processing attached, we'd be able to also add an online transaction. If they had paid with a credit card, we could run their credit card for an additional charge for their outstanding balances. In this case, if we click on the Add Offline Transaction, it asks us what type of transaction it is. We can enter the amount that this transaction is for, the date it was being put in, the payee's name, a reference number for this transaction, the amount, mark off that the amount has been received, and we can add any notes to the transaction. We can also come in here and edit transactions. So for example, for this cash transaction, we can come in here, mark it as received, hit continue, and submit, and boom, that transaction has now been received for that individual, and they will have a balance of $0 as their account is clear and free. In addition to just editing the transactions, we can even apply promo codes here. If we have promo codes that have been set up, we can retroactively apply promo codes to the account. In this case, this would likely mean that we would then need to also give them a discount. You can do that by going to the fees and discounts area and adding a discount or fee amount. You can use this to help fix discrepancies. If there's an online transaction, you can also refund that online transaction through our system. Offline transactions obviously have to be refunded in person. So if you, for example, if you said there was a $25 discount and it was a refund for $25, you would just drop a negative sign in there, hit submit, and they have had $25 refunded to them. Their balance is now out of whack though, because their club price for the package they paid for was $100. They've paid $100, but they've now been refunded $25. So we have a balance discrepancy of $25. So we would have to rectify that in some way to show that they've been refunded that amount of money, either changing the amount they paid by editing this offline transaction to $75, and then being able to still keep track of the fact that they were refunded $25. With a credit card transaction, you wouldn't actually edit the amount. You would be able to actually issue a refund directly. There's a third button here that allows you to add a refund. You can refund for any amount up to the amount that was paid. You cannot obviously refund for more than what's paid, and that refund is then processed through the banking system and can take up to a couple of weeks to go through. Scrolling farther down past the fees and discounts area, where you can add additional fees and discounts to the account, we can view the registrant's information and edit said information if there's anything that's been incorrect, needs to be updated, as well as the parent guardian information, the ability to add a second parent guardian, view the questions that they answered, and see their signature. In this case, it's just a line as it was a dummy registration, but you'd be able to pull up their signature that was used on their waivers, the waivers that everyone has to sign when registering. That is 90% of the functionality within the player's profile. There is, however, 3 other buttons in here that we went over without talking about, and that is the transfer registration to another club, season transfer, and temporary transfer to another club. These apply mostly to the governing body system. The transfer registration to another club allows you for governing body registrations to transfer a registrant to another club. If someone mistakenly registered in your organization and should have registered in another, or needs to be transferred for some reason, rather than having them just completely re-register with that other organization, you can just transfer their registration from one club to another. Click on the Transfer Club button, select what club you're transferring them to, and you can transfer this registration to another club. Depending on the settings that have been set up by the governing body, this registration may need to be approved by your region as well as the governing body themselves, in addition to the club themselves, depending on how it was set up and whether or not you have a middle level between you and your governing body. They have control over all of those settings. In its simplest sense, all that needs approval from is the other club, but depending on how the organization is set up, you may need those other levels of approval once you click that button. A season transfer just lets you move the player from one season to another. So if they registered underneath of the wrong season, for example, if they registered underneath of a non-governing body season, you can move them to a proper governing body season. And lastly, the temporary transfer to another club is the most unique of the 3. It allows you to transfer the player to another club, but also keep them in your system. So normally with the transfer registration to another club, all the player's information will get transferred to the other club. You will still keep your transaction history of them, and you'll be able to see them under your transfers page. With a temporary transfer to another club, you'll still be able to see them in your system as a player that's registered, and you'll be able to see them in another system, another club system, as a player that's registered. This is handy for players that are playing for multiple clubs. It does not happen very often, but there are situations where a player will play in the same league for multiple clubs. And the temporary transfer allows you to put that player on 2 associations and have them still as a single member. You don't have to have them register in two places. You don't have their membership fees getting all messed up. They are simply temporarily transferred to that other club to be assigned to another team. That does it for the majority of the functionality underneath of the registrant information. From here, like I said, you basically have control over everything to do with the registrant's information and send them just about anywhere and do just about anything you need to keep track of your registrants. What we've gone over applies exactly the same for the staff, official, and executive registration information. Teams is a little bit unique, and like I said, we will be doing a separate video just on Teams registration because it is a totally different beast. But tournament registration also kind of falls underneath of the same thing, where you'll be able to just see that the registrant and their information. The only difference with tournaments is you'll also be able to pull up their player rosters. Next, we have the Volunteers tab, which again, just like the rest of these, you can pull up the volunteer jobs that have been signed up for. A little bit simpler as there's not as much information here. You're just pulling up what people said they would do and what jobs they agreed to do using this Volunteers tab. Moving on farther past this, we have the Add Registrations button. The Add Registrations button allows you to add a registration to the system without someone going through the front end. Now, this isn't preferable because it does then not have them tied to the account. There's no way to tie the transactions back to the person's account. So you're losing some tracking there when you add a registration like this. However, there are cases we understand where someone needs to be added after the fact. They don't have access to internet. They can't be registered in a normal way for one reason or another, or they need to be added through the back end using the Add Registration button. The Add Registration button, you just put in the registrant's information, and it'll actually search for the registrant in the system if they're already a member. If they are already a member, it will actually tie it to that membership. So again, you don't end up with duplicates. If they aren't, it'll ask you to provide information about them, like their first name, last name, so on and so forth. You'll choose what season the registrant is going under, as well as what division and even what team. You can ignore package dates if there's no active packages, to then select a package to choose for them. Enter their parent guardian info, as well as have the option to add a second parent guardian contact. Questions, you can answer the questions that they'll have and even mark what payments they've made. At the moment, they haven't checked off any packages, so there's no payments to be added, but we can come down here and choose their payment type once we check off a package and say that the amount has been received or not, and so on and so forth. And lastly, send an email receipt on save. This just allows me to send an email to the parent guardian based on what information was submitted here. Like I said, though, this will not be tied back to the account. It is separate from it when it is an ad registration, which is why we don't recommend using it in any extended sense. It's really for very niche cases on the edge of your registration. You should not be using this to add multiple registrations a season. It should be avoided as much as possible. After the Add Registration button, we have our Transfers area. Underneath of our Transfers area, we can see any incoming and outgoing transfers. We'll take a look at a transfer in 1 second here, but before we do, we're going to merge a registration. So sometimes someone will register for a program under your organization, check off a package, and then realize they forgot to check off another package. They could simply talk to you as an organization, and you can update that from the back end of the system, but people will skip that step and just go right to registering and register again, checking off the other package. This causes a problem because now you have two registrations, sometimes under the same division, same player, same account, same everything, but they're in there twice for some reason, and you don't really want that. What merge registration allows you to do is find two people that are the same like that, so same account, same information, check them off, and if they're under the same season, merge those registrations together. That registration is now one registration instead of two, and all of the packages, payments, fees, promo codes, and fees have all been combined into one. So now you don't have them sitting in there twice. They were already just one member. They just now aren't sitting in your registration system twice as two separate registrations. Going back to the Players tab, we're now going to do a transfer and take a look at what that looks like. So as you can see, we only have the one registrant now. We don't have two people here. The same registrant had registered twice. They're now only in there once. And we can view a history of all of their items now combined together. And what we're going to do is transfer them to another club. We're going to choose which club we're transferring them to, hit continue, hit submit, and the transfer has now been submitted. They're going to continue showing up in our system, but if we go to the Transfers tab, we'll be able to see that the transfer is pending. In this case, there's quite a few things that need to be approved for this. Underneath of the governing body, it looks like it needs approval from the outgoing club, it needs pending approval from the other club, it's pending approval from the region, and it's pending approval from the governing body. So this is the maximum number of approvals that are needed. In the simplest version, it'll only need pending approval from the other club. Again, this is all set up by the governing body, and that's how you can see how many approvals are needed and how far out it is from being actually approved, as well as you can see any incoming transfers here. At the moment there's no incoming transfers, but if there was, you'd be able to check it off as approved, assuming that everyone else had also approved it, or you're the only one left who needed to approve, or only one that needed to approve. That player would then appear in your system. Assign players and assign staff. This is the exact same buttons we had looked at earlier underneath of the Teams tab, where you can assign your players and staff. Going down to the next tab, we have injuries and suspensions. This is a part of our system that is currently under development with the governing body system, but it will essentially allow you to add injuries to the system that can then be tracked year over year with your membership. The governing body can add the types of injuries, and during the registration process, players can add to their profiles the injuries they have sustained, essentially adding a historical record of injuries. This is still in its infancy, so I don't believe it's quite up and functioning at the moment, but I do expect to see that over this year, and we'll update this video accordingly once the injuries area is completed. Suspensions, similarly, is a system that is on the way. As you can see from that, it's not quite done. They're currently working on the suspension system to, again, allow you to track suspensions year over year of your membership through your registration system. Age check. Age check is where you can go to pull up people who are in your out-of-bounds age ranges. So if you have not blocked out-of-bound age ranges, you can actually view anyone who is in out-of-bound age range. So if they've registered, they were out of bounds, they got the warning, you can come in here and see those out-of-bound registrations, pull them up. So for example, this one, he was 14, the age cutoff is 15. This needs to be approved by the governing body to go through, because it is an out-of-bounds age range registration, and because it's under the governing body, it doesn't need to be approved by you, it needs to be approved by the governing body. And the very last thing is the merge registrations, which we've already covered. Next, we have the Transactions tab. Underneath of Transactions, we have quite a few things, primarily being transactions. From here, we can run reports and view all the information of our transactions and search up based on things like name, division, so on and so forth. We can see if the money has been received or not, and the information on that transaction itself. We can come in here and edit that. We can change the type of payment, the amount, the date, whether it's been received, so on and so forth. We can view our outstanding balances. So underneath of here, we would be able to view just our specifically outstanding balances. We can even check off everyone who's outstanding and send out an email to them about their outstanding balances, essentially letting them know that, hey, they have an outstanding balance. This is important for a couple reasons. If they're using credit card, they can actually sign back into their account and they can make a payment against their outstanding balance if you have a merchant account hooked up. Anyone can do this at any time to pay off their outstanding balance. The system will always double check before running a pending payment or before you add anything if their balance is clean. So if there's a pending payment for $50, but they decide to go in there and make a payment against their account to clear it out, the pending payment will check. If there isn't an outstanding balance, it will just cancel the upcoming pending payment, as like I said, the account is already clear. But yeah, we can look in here at all of our outstanding balances, see what email addresses they're going to go to, check them off, and send out an email to those individuals. We can also clear balances. If we've got a whole bunch of outstanding balances and they've all been rectified already, but you didn't do a very good job of checking off that they have been rectified, you can come in here and check these off and just clear the balances this way. Instead of actually going into the account and putting in the payment has been received or adding fees and discounts, we can just check it off and clear the balance. The reason you do this is that at times you can be prevented from registering if you have an outstanding balance with your association. And lastly, we have the batch run offline credit cards. There isn't a merchant account hooked up to this club, but if there was, you could use this to run your offline credit cards if you use the offline credit card option. We talked about this earlier underneath of the season settings. If you don't have a merchant account, you can use something called offline credit card. If you're getting a merchant account, you don't have it yet, you can use the offline credit card option as a stopgap. Offline credit card will basically take that information, put it inside of a vault, and then once you have your merchant account, you can run those credit cards. In order to run those credit cards, you come under transactions and do the batch run offline credit cards. This will run all those cards and let you know which ones have failed. You'll have to follow up with those individuals, letting them know that the charge failed and they either need to sign into their account to make a payment against their outstanding balance because Credit Card Online is now functioning, or talk to you about an alternative form of payment. That does it for the Transactions tab. We're now at Mail. Mail is one of the most powerful areas of the RAMP registration system. Underneath of the Mail tab, you can compose mail to anyone that has ever registered underneath of your organization and anyone's email, either parent or guardian, that was tied to those registrations. From here, we can choose our season, divisions, as well as the from name. So the from name basically appears in the title of the email, so it doesn't come from the mass mailer. All mails come from our mass mailer, but by putting a from name in there, it appears as what you put in there. So from your organization, so on and so forth. You can enter a reply to email address. A reply to email address will receive any replies to this mass mail. So if you send it a mass mail and someone wants to reply to it, the replies will go to whatever email address you put in there, up to 2. Email category, this will choose what email addresses you're sending to. So if you're sending to players, that's the email address associated with the player that was registered. If you choose staff, that would be staff email addresses. Parent guardian would be parent guardian or emergency contact emails that are tied to the player registrations. And official obviously would be the officials. You can even choose specific teams to send emails to if you so desire. It would give you a drop down of any available teams. So if we go to the other one, we can actually choose the team that's been created to send an email specifically to them. We can add additional email addresses using a comma inside of this field. So if we have additional people who need to receive this email that aren't covered by the information above, we can add them through this as well. And then we add a subject line, and we have this box to drop in our information that's going to be sent out to everyone. And using this functionality, you can send out thousands of emails at once to your membership. You can even send out to historical mailing lists by pulling up old seasons and old divisions. So, for example, the most common way this is used is the new season is coming up. You want to send a reminder to everyone that the registration is opening up on a certain date. You'll select last year's season, choose pretty much everyone underneath of it, and send an email out to them with that information. Without getting too far ahead of ourselves, this is where you would type your email, but you can also drop in files and photos here. Keep in mind that does affect the send times. When it comes to dropping in files, the way it works is you will enter a piece of text, highlight that piece of text and right-click on it, and you're now going to go Insert Link. It's going to ask you for a URL, so if you wanted, you could paste in a URL to go somewhere, but what we're going to do is click on this little file folder, and it's going to open up something called the Moxie Manager. The Moxie Manager is how you add files to the emails. It's going to ask you to upload your file. You're going to drag and drop the file in here, or click Add Files to open up your file manager on your computer, whether it be a Mac or a PC. Once you've chosen those files, they'll appear inside of this. So if we quickly just want to pull up an example here, I'm going to choose this test upload, hit OK, and this piece of text is now linked to that file. If someone was to click on this link in the email, it would download this file for them from our servers at Ramp Interactive. And that's how you can send things like Word documents and PDFs through the mass mailer. There is no actual attachment functionality. You only do it through the Moxie Manager and this function here. Next, in the Mail tab, we have the Mass Mail Outbox. Underneath of the Mass Mail Outbox, we can see all the mails we've sent, pull up who they went to, when they went out, whether or not they've gone out. It does take a bit of time for a mass mail to go out because it is thousands upon thousands of emails. And then lastly, we have email opt-outs. Part of Canadian law, they need to have the ability to opt out of emails. So there is a piece of text at the bottom of all Ramp Interactive mass mails that allows a person who is receiving it to opt out of receiving emails from us in the future. If someone does opt out, you'll be able to see their email address underneath of here, and you can even search them underneath of this search bar. Often a thing we will see is someone complaining they aren't getting messages from the association, but they've forgotten that they said they didn't want to receive mail from you anymore, and they're listed underneath of the opt-out. So it's important in a lot of cases that they don't click that. It's not us sending messages, it is you, the organization, and most of the time those messages are important. So opting out is sometimes a risky business, and people forget they have done it in the past. That does it for mail. Next, we have the Imports tab. Imports is something that should and shouldn't be used. Importing registrations allows you to put in registrations if you have already gotten them through another method, do not take online registration, or some other form. Essentially, it's going to ask you to fill in a CSV template you're going to get from here. Click there to download it. It'll ask you to save the file, and then you'll be able to open and fill it out. The instructions for filling out the file are located right on the page here. It's very simple to follow. Follow the instructions on this, and you'll be able to import it in by going to Browse and selecting that filled in file. The reason we do not recommend doing this is it eliminates a lot of the functionality of the system. There's no tracking of accounts, there's no tracking of transactions tied to accounts, there's no ability to track who's tied to who, there's no ability to make sure that you've got the right person under the right area, there's no ability for parents to go in and pay their outstanding balances. It essentially eliminates the entire point of having the registration system. If you're just going to import in the registrations, you're missing out on the majority of the functionality. We don't recommend using the import registrations, but we do recognize that at times it is necessary, and for some smaller organizations who don't even do online registrations, they are willing to enter their 20 registrants into a PDF file or into a CSV file and upload it through the import registrations area. So once again, it does work. It is an option that you have, but we do not recommend it as it eliminates the highly important and valuable aspects of the registration system. Underneath of imports, we have exports. Exports allow you to export your players and staff into a CSV file. This is the way we currently use of getting players and staff into Ramp Interactive websites. Going to the export, you just simply select the divisions, teams, or as well as season you want to export, and whether or not you want to include staff in that export. Simply click Download Spreadsheet, and it will download a Excel file with the information that you just asked for. We are looking at a live sync between the Ramp registration system and website at the moment, but currently the only way to bring them across is using the import functionality in the website after exporting it from your registration system. You can also export birth certificates, so rather than having to review it one at a time, you can choose a season and a division and export a zip file of the birth certificate photos to be reviewed. That way you don't need to manually go through the accounts one at a time. You can just export the information all at once. That does it for the exports. The last section that we have is the reports. Reports is possibly the most powerful area of the entire registration system, which allows you to run reports on just about everything and anything within your registration platform. We'll start with players, as it's very similar for most of the areas, but underneath of here, we can view player registrations based on a number of criteria. So if we want, we can just pull up by certain divisions, teams, by certain names, by a start date or end date, by financials, if they're owing, if they've paid, if they've overpaid. We can pull it up by what package they chose. Once we've chosen the criteria that we want, we can choose what information we want in the report. We can choose exactly which information we want. We can choose everything. We can just choose one piece of item. If we only want to see the amount they paid, we can pull that up. We can see their fee totals. We can see their balance. We can pull up the if they were on a waitlist package. You can pull up the photo dates. You can pull up pretty much anything that was asked in the system from the reports area. This includes their questions that they answered and any custom file uploads. So any questions that you added to the system, you can pull all those up in addition to all the basic contact info that was put into the system. On top of all this, when you're happy with a set of questions that have been checked off or a set of criteria, you can actually save the template for future use. Give it a name, and then going forward, you can load those templates by clicking the load button. So you don't have to over and over again go through and check off certain things. You can make your template, hit save, and then going forward, just load that template to pull up that information. Once you've got what you want checked off, you just simply hit the view report button, and it'll open a pop-up here that'll show you that information, and you can download a spreadsheet or a CSV right from here, as well as, instead of viewing the report, downloading the spreadsheet or CSV from the report page itself. Make sure you have pop-ups enabled to view the report. If you do not have pop-ups enabled, you will not see this pop-up with the report. You can still use the download spreadsheet and download CSV, but pop-ups will, if pop-ups are blocked, you will not see this pop-up with the report in a text format for you to view. We will never put any pop-ups in here for ads or anything like that. The pop-ups are only for the report functionality. Looking ahead to staff, official, and executive, it is an identical version of what we just saw with the Players tab. For coaching certifications underneath of governing bodies, those can also be included. The governing body can add those certifications, and those certifications are usually nationally approved certifications, which is what we're actually looking at here. So a staff registration underneath of a governing body would include these certifications. Underneath of the Officials tab, we can see the exact same thing that we looked at underneath the Players and Staff. Executive, again, same thing, just a little less information as it does not require as much. It doesn't have additional questions in this case. It doesn't have parent guardian, so on and so forth. Tournaments, again, the same thing. But now we do get to some unique ones. So instead of just tournament registration, we also have tournament roster registrations. So tournament rosters are entered at the time of a tournament registration. You can pull up that roster's information and view reports on those tournament rosters. Same thing for team registrations. We can view the team registrations, but also the team members. So players that have registered to their team after the team was registered with the organization, you can do a report on that similar to a player report, where you can pull up what team they're assigned to, any questions that were associated with them, so on and so forth. Exactly the same as you would with the Players tab. Associated players, so AP, if you didn't watch the teams portion of this video, AP players are the second team. Basically, if a player is assigned to more than one team in your organization, their second team association is their AP association. That name is what we just use for nomenclature. You might call it something different. It's just what we call it as an AP player. So an AP player report gives you a report on anyone who is assigned to a second team, so their second team assignments. Team staff and team contact reports. So staff that has been assigned to teams, you can run reports on that, as well as team contacts. So this would apply for things like tournament staff, and team registration staff would apply underneath of this team contacts report, in addition to just staff being assigned to teams already. So that covers both of those categories. Volunteers allows you to run reports on the volunteers if you're using the volunteer module. If you aren't using the volunteer module, this won't apply. Go to the volunteer module in the description below if you want to see the volunteer module and how that works. This, again, just like everything else, allows you to run a report based on the volunteer information. Transactions, transaction reporting. You can already pull up a lot of transaction information from the transaction tab, but this is actually designated reporting for transactions. So you can see things like card type when the payment was created, notes on transactions. Obviously, card type only applies if it's a credit card transactions, the type of transactions, the packages that were associated with these transactions, how many transactions there were, the player that was associated with these transactions, the reference number for transactions. Any sort of information with the transactions can be pulled from here. You can also show the price for each package when you're doing this. Honestly, there's not a lot it doesn't do. If you ever do have a request for something that needs to be added underneath of transaction reporting, please feel free to let us know. Like with all the other reporting, you can create and save templates here. View reports, download spreadsheets and CSVs of this information. Invoice and count reports. This has to do, again, with more of the governing body side of things. You can view invoice reports based on the players that have registered. So this would be things like fees, as well as the number of players that have registered, the costs, the cost of those registrations, what was paid, so on and so forth. And you can do that based on certain dates. You can view those reports through here based on season, similar to the rest of the reporting functionality. Custom file upload reports. So any custom file uploads that you create, you can actually run reports on those separately from everything else. So similar to like the birth certificate export, you can actually run a custom file report based on the custom file uploads that you created, in addition to the existing ones. So has photo, has birth certificate, the ones that are part of the system already are also included on this page. And lastly, we have the Notes tab. The Notes tab is where if there were any notes made on a player's profile, on a staff's profile, on any sort of registration, you can run reports on those notes and pull up those notes from this tab. And that does it for the entirety of the RAMP registration system. Like I said, there will be a separate video coming out that goes into more detail on team registration because team registration is so different. Team registration, tournament registration will be covered in that, going into a lot more detail on the differences between that and the regular registration. Hopefully this video has answered any questions you have. If you do have any more questions, feel free to email support@rampinteractive.com or call us toll-free at 1-866 607-7267. Thank you for watching this RAMP Interactive tutorial, and have a good day.